Hey, beautiful ones. So to update you, I know I haven't been doing the astrology forecast, and if I'm really honest, that it's not lighting me up anymore. So it's something that I will be stopping. But instead, I'm just gonna be sharing my own journey with you and sharing about archetypes and things. And I might be inspired by certain moon, new moon, full moons to do different energy updates for you, but they won't be in the same format. They won't be every 2 weeks. So I right now I'm just following the energy, following what I'm inspired to share about. And I was getting just like really rigid in it. And for me, like astrology, I love astrology through the psychological lens, which is the way I always talk about it, right? But just something about doing these forecasts, I was like, oh, I should do it. And when something's a should, no, that's when my energy shuts down. And for you, if you're recognizing, oh, I'm still doing this because I think I should, then question that because people will feel that energy and align with what it is that you really feel excited about, what lights you up. So the topic that I'm really excited about today, and I swear if I could just have like instill something in every single human, it would be this, that sensitivity is a superpower. Sensitivity is a superpower. I'm going to say that again because the amount of times I hear, women talking about their sensitivity as a burden, as a curse. I would be rich, honestly. And this really comes from the heart, this topic, because as a take the label or not, but as a highly sensitive person myself, when I found the book, The Highly Sensitive Person by Elaine Aron, I think it was in 2019, I found it. Um, it really landed for me. And it was this idea that, you know, I'm not broken. I was just deeply misunderstood, right? And, you know, the story for me growing up was that I was a really shy, reserved kid. And, you know, going to school was overwhelming. And you may have heard me talk about this story, like these snippets before, but this is really what I'm going to share today. Is going to be about the traits of being highly sensitive and how to kind of navigate that in a world that is just so overstimulating. So that is what I'm going to be diving into to give you a little premise to that. And so I was always sort of being projected on that. I was so shy and I was so quiet and like Hannah should speak up more in class, blah, blah, blah. I was so sick of that on my report. And what then when I read and found the highly sensitive person, it was a moment of real recognition. Okay, this is who I am. Um, yes, I might be shy, but actually, often if you're labeled as shy, what's actually going on is you're actually deeply sensitive, and people don't understand that. So they're labeling you as shy, right? Because as humans, we want to put people in a box. It makes it easier. So you may have been labeled as shy, but actually you are highly sensitive. And I'm going to break that down for anyone that doesn't know, because I really want this to illuminate the strengths of your sensitivity so you can really look at yourself in a new light, in a new empowered way and go, okay, I'm not broken. I was just deeply misunderstood, right? And now I know how to navigate that from a place of, being centered and appreciating and loving on my sensitivity, right? That is always my intention. And this is something I spoke about in my monthly space, being highly sensitive with the women that really resonate with that. So I was like, I'm going to make a video on this for you guys here. Um, so yeah, basically what does it mean to be highly sensitive? You may have heard that term before. A lot of people also refer to being an empath. Well, being highly sensitive, this is a trait you're born with. And it's only 20 to 30% of the population, right? I want to highlight that for a moment because I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with you, but we are in the minority if you're highly sensitive. And what that means is most people say the other 80%, 70% of the world are not highly sensitive. So no wonder people that are highly sensitive are are going to struggle to keep up in such a fast-paced world if they don't understand what they need and how to kind of love on their sensitivity and go at their own pace, right? So that's what I'm going to break down. Um, so it's not that you're broken, you're born with this trait, and it's basically that you have a more highly attuned nervous system. It basically means you feel things more intensely than other people. You're more attuned to subtle energies, you walk into a room and you can maybe sense, oh, this person's feeling this and this person's feeling that. You just kind of know and feel things. And, I literally used to think everyone was like this. I was like, oh, did you get that? That person is feeling really upset or something. And the person would look at me blankly, like, what are you talking about? So, you know, not everyone has high sensitivity. I do believe everyone is obviously sensitive to some degree. There's different levels of it. And in the book, do buy the book. It's really insightful. There is a quiz you can probably do online where you take the quiz. Actually, I'll post a link below of like you do the quiz to see if you are highly sensitive, but you'll probably recognize it from what I'm showing in this video. And I think when I did it, I came out at like 24 out of 25. So, yeah, it was super insightful for me. And the fact that it was like you're not shy, you're just sensitive. And one of the things I really clocked when I was reading this book is it's like, you know, I was quite slow to changes. Like I remember when I moved up to secondary school, and I'm sure it was my parents were saying that like, or having a conversation with my teachers because I was like really struggling, and I took time to adjust to this new environment. And this might be a theme for you if in your life now when a big change happens, maybe you start a new job or you end up, a relationship breaks down, it can take you longer to process it. And that's okay, but we need to stop beating ourselves up for trying to go at a really fast pace that is not going to work for us. And also just to premise that actually not, you'll be surprised, not all this is not referring to introverts. Not all highly sensitive people are introverts, which did surprise me. There will be a big percentage probably that are introverts, but in the book, she specifically talks about this idea that it's not introversion and extroversion. There are extroverts out there that are highly sensitive. So you might be an extrovert, but you also feel things deeply. That's more about like if you feel energized being around people, there's that extrovert quality, or if you're more energized spending time on your own, you're probably more introverted. But anyway, that's a whole nother thing. So in the book, yeah, she talks about this, you know, feeling quite different, you know. And so there's four key things to high sensitivity. So number one is this depth of processing. And what it means by depth of processing, and this relates to finding transitions and changes maybe harder than other people. So, um, or at least I can obviously speak from experience and share my examples to help illustrate these things. Depth of processing it's like you're not just, you go into for example, going into a new school. I'm not, I'm processing this new environment. I'm taking it all in. I'm taking in all these different new teachers and these new people that I'm in school with. Um, but somebody that's highly sensitive will notice everything, will take in, you know, the energy of the room, the details on the curtains, and it is going to be slightly different to every person. The specific, the art, if there's art on the walls, that maybe that particularly the energy and emotions of those teachers. So when you're learning, and for example, a lot of you may relate to this, like I just found school very overwhelming. And it's partly because I relate it to one of the things is depth of processing because I was taking in so much. And my mind was always going 100 miles an hour because I couldn't just take in, what the teacher was saying. I probably took in their tone of voice, like how they were feeling. Like this is all happening unconsciously, by the way, because I didn't know, obviously, when I was young, oh, I'm highly sensitive. This is often something you realize later on in life. Um, and then it's like, well, why also did things affect me so much? Like change of environment. Um, I didn't speak up a lot in class. Probably I was like feeling out the environment of the teachers. Um, and then I remember like a lot, my English teacher really believed in me and I was good at writing, I was good at English. And she would often actually pick on me because she knew that I could contribute something really valuable, but I would never offer answers. So she was trying to sort of get it out of me. But at the time, I remember feeling so like angry that I was being picked on because if you're also really sensitive, you don't want, well, at that age, I didn't want attention on me. Like that was mortifying. Like, what if I got the answer wrong or something? So there's so many levels to this depth of processing. It's not just the surface level things that you see. It's everything underneath that. It's the energy, it's the emotions. Like I said, it's visually, we're going to have different strengths as sensitives. Like I'm quite visual, so I take in have that depth of processing with sounds and with music and things like that. Um, and so it's like you're processing more. And this is where our nervous system can literally get kind of literally frazzled and overworked because obviously in the world there's so much stimulus, right? Even just going to, the supermarket, there's like again, there's the sounds around you, there's the bright lights. Like I really struggle with bright lights. I need to wear sunglasses. People think, what the fuck? I don't care anymore. Bright lights, there might be smells from some sort of deli counter, um, and just there's all this to navigate. Um, and it's knowing these things about yourself so that you can actually put things in place to support yourself. But also, the depth of processing is such a gift because it means if you do any kind of energy work or like holistic work, whatever you're doing, if you're working with people, like this is your strength because you hold space for people and they will feel so seen and heard with you. They will feel so safe that, for example, when I hold a group space, I'm able to dig deeper because I can feel the energy underneath what somebody's saying. So as a therapist, as a guide, as a whatever you're doing, you will bring a deeper level of kind of clarity to whoever you're supporting, which is so beautiful, which some other people might not have even noticed, right? So you probably notice the person that's not feeling okay when everyone else doesn't. So this really is a gift, but it's also knowing that with, being highly sensitive, and I will get to that other point of this is number one, the depth of processing, is empathy. Um, empathy, we feel things so deeply, but it's not your responsibility to fix people. I'm not saying that. And the empathy is the gift, but you have to have strong energetic boundaries. That is something I teach a lot of people. Um, because they're not protecting their energy, and that's when you become like a sponge to everything out there, which is not what we want. That's when we end up frazzled. So this depth of processing, I could go on, but I feel like that covers that point. um and basically the depth of processing is like you, and that kind of links into the other one actually, but you feel the heights of joy and the depths of sadness as an example. So that adds into this depth of processing. You're not just feeling things on a superficial level, you're feeling the energy and the emotions are behind everything. So that was number one. Number two of high sensitivity is overstimulation. And of course, some of these might jump out at you more than others. Just take what resonates. Mm. Well, the overstimulation speaks for itself, but it goes back to that supermarket I was talking about. Overstimulation, because you're processing so much at such depth, it's only natural that your nervous system can get frazzled, can go into fight or flight as a way to protect yourself. So it's always useful to know what are the symptoms of being overstimulated. You may already have an idea of that. Like I know when I'm overstimulated, say I've been, had like a social day, and I love being social. It's not that I don't. But for example, yesterday I had like quite a social day. I went to networking. And then I had came back, had some lunch, then I went to meet a friend, and then I had to go to the chiropractor in the evening. So there's all these like, having to navigate to get to different environments. Um, that can also be overstimulating because you're having to navigate again all those different things in your environments. So, I always say with people that are highly sensitive, it's also really important to have transition time between things. So you can support yourself to come out of that overstimulation, calm your body down, and then move on to the next thing. Because if not, if you're overstimulated, for me, I can feel really irritated. I feel really tired, and then I start taking it out on, my partner or something. So when I'm irritated, it's a sign that I'm overstimulated. And because I've just taken so much in, I sometimes that's my coping strategy is almost to be irritated, is to take it out on my partner. Um, and then I put a wall up and I kind of go into my head and I've got these racing thoughts. That's when I know I'm overstimulated. And it might be different for you. But I know I just then need, if I'm overstimulated, and what helps overstimulation is to just be quiet. It's to just find a calm space at home in your garden and just sit quietly. Because when you sit quietly with nothing to do, this also helps you to process all those things that you've taken in from earlier in the day and just allow that processing to continue subconsciously without you actually actively processing it, which will definitely help. Um, so yeah, practices for overstimulation, being in silence really helps me. Even if you've had a busy day coming home, like lighting a candle and just looking at the candle flame, coming back to stillness. Anything like that that can calm you. It might be just like, you know, petting a cat or reading some of a novel. But it's also important when you're overstimulated, um, you probably don't want to take in more input. So just be aware of that. Because as somebody that loves learning, I can go, oh yeah, I'll just listen to this bit of a podcast, but I actually don't need to take more in. So that's really just being mindful of your input from the day, right? Because, this world works so fast. And if we've already like gone to a talk and interacted with all these different people, you're probably processing quite a lot for your nervous system. So important to have that stillness throughout the day. That was the second one. Third of high sensitivity is this, she calls it emotional responsitivity. No, sorry, I'm not saying that right. Emotional, well, I'm going to use that word instead, emotional reactivity or empathy. So this relates back to, I did touch on this. This is really feeling things, feeling other people's emotions and energy. Like that is such a gift. It really is. And we have to be boundaries around it because often people that are highly sensitive, and I've fallen into this pattern of being a martyr, like I'm responsible for other people's lives and I have to hold their pain for them, right? Like if you're a psychic sponge, which you will be as a highly sensitive person, that's when we can see it as a curse. But we just need to learn saying no to things that we don't want to do, saying no to things when we're overstimulated, and having those energetic boundaries so that you don't take on people's energy. Because this is a thing, when we take on people's energy and emotions, then we actually don't know what we need. We don't know what boundaries to kind of put in place because our energy is fused in with somebody else. And that is a very as an archetype, this is a very Neptunian theme. Like Neptune is about being really open and receptive and having your kind of antennae open to energy. But at the same time, yes, we want to be receptive. We want to be living from our heart, but we also need to protect our energy. So I can't stress how important energy protection is. I've got things on my other socials about this. So important to learn energy protection because that's going to help you to thrive in the world and not feel burdened and just fatigued and overwhelmed by everyone else's stuff. If we're not, and being conscious what you're interacting with, literally, I can't stress this enough. Like, honestly, the best thing you can do is stop watching the news if you do. Because, first of all, it's not that you're being ignorant, you are literally protecting your energy and you're protecting your mental health, right? Because yes, there are awful things going on in the world, but at the same time, it doesn't help to add your fear to the situation. Actually, it helps more in those cases for you to stay centered in your own lane, for you to stay centered in your heart, which is a high vibration of love, which is actually way more feel healing than fear and to be in your own lane. So I can't stress that enough. Um, and this emotional reactivity obviously means you feel everything at such a deep level and the depths, you get to basically experience the full spectrum of emotions in this life, which is a beautiful thing as well. Like you're not just going to feel joy and sadness, you're going to feel those, joy and elation is going to be heightened. There's going to be, you know, full sensations in the body. It's going to take you over and it's going to uplift you. And the same with any of the other emotions, because I don't believe anything is good or bad. That's a whole toxic positivity thing, right? You get to feel it all because actually, if you don't feel the depths of sadness and grief and anger, then how can you appreciate joy and elation? We need the light and dark, we need both. So you feel the depths of every emotion. And again, that is such a beautiful thing. May feel intense. I'm not saying that because it is intense. Um, but also you have that fuel. That's what, makes you feel alive and gives you that energy as a human, right? It's a messy life, and it's almost like the phrase, it's better to have loved than lost than not loved at all. It's intense. I know it is. And it is a beautiful thing because it means what the work that you bring to the world, your soul work, is way more deep and way more powerful, and people will feel the heart of it if you're breathing and living that from the heart. It will be magnetic. Um, so remember that. And then the fourth point of the high sensitivity she talks about is sensitivity to subtleties, which is a little bit connected to the first one, slightly that depth of processing. So this is basically like subtleties, for example, in an environment. You go to a party, you can just feel, the mood of that person over there. Or you might just get an intuition about, oh, that person's going through this situation. Again, it's going to play out very differently depending on your sort of psychic abilities as such. And that can relate to, like I always forget what they're called, but like clairvoyance, seeing things, you might get like a vision. Um, this can also play out in dreams. I'm quite visual, so I have like quite powerful dreams, sometimes like premonitions of like things that are going to happen, and they actually do. Um, what's it? Clairaudience, clairsentient, and the other one. But it's like there's one of them is like clear knowing. You just know something, right? You get an idea and you just know, okay, I've got to action that, or I've got to contact this person. I don't know why, but I've got to reach out to that person. Clear knowing. It could also be clear, what's the other one? But feeling. So the subtleties are basically linked to the five senses. Feeling like again, you feel compelled to go somewhere. Spontaneously, you're like, I've got to go down to the river. And then something else happens probably a synchronicity happens and you meet this person and something magical happens. So those subtleties are listening to those intuitive nudges you're receiving and acting on them. We have this ability, like it's so strong. Of course, you might shut it down because you've been told that all the negative things of sensitivity, like, oh, you're too much, you're too intense, like, why are you so emotionally up and down, right? All of that stuff. That is other people's projections because they don't understand sensitivity, and they probably aren't sensitive, by the way. People that get triggered by sensitivity and not owning their sensitivity, and second, um, they probably see how they've shut down their sensitivity. Or two, they aren't highly sensitive, so they don't understand it. They'll understand it to a certain degree, but they won't fully understand it, right? So that sensitivity to subtleties, like sensing, tasting things, you might like have a whole full-blown sensational experience from eating, right? It can just be in so many different ways, this sensitivity to subtleties. Um, which does link back a little bit to, like I was saying about that trip to the supermarket. Again, you're taking in the energy. Like I know that I struggle in environments with like that super bright light, the artificial lights. So, it's just minimizing. I mean, I can't control that, but I can just minimize how much I go into those shops or ordering online or going to a grocery shop instead. So there's all these kind of practices you can integrate once you understand these parts of yourself. Um, Yeah, but that subtleties can also, that's why a lot of us as highly sensitives can struggle with boundaries because we don't want to hurt people's feelings, right? We don't want to enforce something and actually maybe reject somebody because we know what it's like. We know the pain of being rejected. Um, but it's not selfish to put your energy first and honor your needs. And I mean, everyone needs to do that, but particularly if you're highly sensitive, you need to give yourself rest, give yourself space to just be. I can't stress this enough because your nervous system is not meant to live at a million miles an hour. No, it's really not. And if you are, you're going to burn yourself out quite easily. You're going to feel frazzled and just don't have any energy, right? And this happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I ended up feeling burnt out and I felt quite frazzled because I'd been going at such a almost doing so many things in the last month or so. And I was just I was not even scheduling in rest. I wasn't even practicing what I preached, so I hold my hands up high. I didn't, and I was like, what is going on? I need to slow down. I need just, you know, at least a day or two where I'm not doing anything or have any appointments or anything on, right? Where I can stay at home, can read a book and nourish myself and rest. Like it's so important for you guys. Um, and so th those boundaries can be difficult because if you're constantly taking in people's energy, then you don't know what you need because you might be absorbing that person's energy and you're like, what do I need? How do I actually feel about this? Because you've taken on somebody else's and you're like, is this mine or is this yours? So energetic protection, do that is a non-negotiable every single day to stay in your own energy field and stay connected to your emotions. If you need support with this, do reach out. That's also why I hold my monthly cacao circles for women to come in, tune into their intuition, have that space for deep rest and deep nourishment. It is so important. I feel that's what I wanted to say for my notes, particularly. Yes. And, boundaries is something I've always struggled with to know what it is I want and what I'm saying no to. But essentially, a boundary is like, what do you want to what do you want to give your energy and time to, and what don't you? And no is a sentence, right? A lot of us end up because we're so empathetic, trying to over explain why we can't do something. You can just say no, no thanks, or no, I don't want to do that right now. No, that's it. So notice when you're over explaining because there's probably a part of you feels that you're not enough to just say no to somebody because you're never going to be able to control how that person receives your, you know, choice, right? But you can't control that. You can't control how people are going to receive you or perceive you. So stop trying to because it's going to drain your energy. Focus on what you need, that deep rest, that deep nourishment. And I would love to hear like what is landing for you. What are your takeaways from this video on being highly sensitive? Let me know in the comments below. All right, so much love to you all. Bye.